Welcome to the Celebration Church Orlando podcast. This is a segment we like to call After the Message, where the conversation about life, God, and the Bible continue beyond Sunday. We hope today's episode will encourage, enlighten, and inspire you. Hello, Internet. I'm sure you've missed us.
How could they not?
How could they not? Welcome to After the Message. This is a segment on the Celebration Church Orlando podcast.
Mm-hmm.
My name's Nate, and I am joined by the senior pastor of Celebration Church Orlando, Pastor Keith Pittman. How are you, my friend?
I am doing well.
Yeah?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Doing pretty good.
Football season at the time of this recording is coming up.
Yeah?
My mind is thinking through, do you do fantasy football? You don't do that.
Not anymore.
Okay.
No, yeah.
Yes, my mind's thinking a little bit about that. I'm last in the draft, which I think is certainly been targeted by some of the guys in the church. So I do feel a way about that. So pray for me. But it's an exciting season, a lot of moving parts, a lot of things going on, man. But I'm glad to be back.
Yeah. On the verge of pumpkin spice latte season as well. And so I'm sure a few of our listeners are excited about such things.
Present company included.
That's right. So in this new season, we are tackling this idea of spiritual disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
In our church specifically, the series title is Rhythms.
Mm-hmm.
We have read in church history how it could be called rules of life,
Mm-hmm.
et cetera, et cetera. Basically, just trying to figure out what we do with our time when it comes to following Jesus. And so I guess I always like to ask you, get a little bit of inside scoop in the preparation for this series.
Mm-hmm.
What was the thought behind it? Why did you think it may be beneficial to discuss and to teach about rhythms?
Yeah. It's a couple of layers to it. There's certainly a seasonal dynamic connected to it.
Okay.
And so seasonally, I'm aware of the rhythms of our church. And one of the rhythms that we've been able to deduce is that in the summertime, people are traveling. There's a lot of things going on. So folks may not be as present. I get it. That's a part of it. So I wanted to have a series that was centered around, okay, like now that your kids are back in school and your schedules are getting a little bit more regulated, we need to become more prioritized and intentional about, hey, how do we get back in rhythm with prioritizing the things of God in the household of faith? So there's certainly a cultural awareness of what this season represents for back to school season and things like that. But I think the greater thing was really beginning to tackle and approach, what does it really mean to walk in fellowship with God in an intentional way that's not legalistic, but how do we truly keep in step with the Spirit? And I think for me, a lot of times when I'm thinking about what we're going to be praying about, what we're going to be teaching to our church, it happens in patterns. And I remember last year, as I was reading through the book of Galatians, I kind of pick a book that I'll read through a couple of times and just kind of see what mine's out. And it starts with being for me. And then I begin to seek God, like, hey, Lord, is this for somebody else? Is this for our church? Is this for my small group? Who is it for? And so when I came across Galatians 5 and it talked about keeping in step with the Spirit, man, I sat with it for like 3 months. And like, what does that really mean, keeping in step with the Spirit? And I think that's where it began to mine out. Like, okay, so the Spirit is moving. Our responsibility is to keep in step. And that's when I just began my mind creatively thinks about rhythms, dancing, keeping in step with him. He's taking the lead, but we want to follow accordingly. And so that kind of like gave birth to it. So that's my long way of saying it's a cultural thing, recognizing, hey, we need to prioritize the things of God, but also started last year when I was just looking at how do we keep in step with the Spirit? And I truly believe after a lot of thinking, praying, research, years of walking with the Lord, that those spiritual disciplines, rhythms, rule of life, whatever we want to call it, that is how we keep in step with the Spirit.
We are using the resources that are generously provided by Practicing the Way, John Mark Comer. Can you talk a little bit about, I know personally his writings and teachings have impacted you, but can you talk a little bit about why we chose to partner or to utilize some of the things that he's made available or that organization now has made available to our church?
Yeah, like you said, I've been a person who's admired and appreciated and absorbed his work for years. I think the way he puts things in a very practical way. I'm also connected to the reality that this is a man who's a pastor. He's pastored a church in a very secular city. So this is not someone speaking from theories, but he does a phenomenal job at, in my opinion, pulling the ancient practices of our faith and contextualizing it in a modern way.
Hmm.
So something that I would like to say when I'm describing our church to people is we're ancient future. It's pulling from the traditions of the past while simultaneously knowing that we're a present church that is trying to lead people to the future. So I think he encapsulates that very well. So I've read multiple books from him, and just as my own source of perspective and things like that. But when he did come out with his book, Practicing the Way, I actually did it with a small group with some of the guys from the church when it first came out. So this is going back over a year or so ago, probably 2 years at this point. And I remember going through it then and him walking through these spiritual disciplines and honestly sitting with guys through it. And it was like so eye-opening to them. It was almost as if they had never heard some of it before. Now they've heard it practically in teachings, and we've led our church through a spiritual discipline season in an intentional way before. But I think the way that it was packaged, it really landed because it was so within reach. So once we saw that, I'm like, great. So we took our church, or took our team through that, and it was great. Then when I began to recognize, like, hey, this is more than a book. He's actually creating resources and rolling this out so it actually becomes something that is accessible, not only to individuals, but to the church as well. I monitored it for about a year and looked at it, engaged it myself. And that's when I said, man, I think this is the right time to pull this into our church. So we're still on ramping it. We're still going to continue to utilize those resources. They make it available for free. And so he's in the camp with the Bible Project. All those things are just incredible resources that they make available to our church. And so for me, it just seemed like a no-brainer. I just don't believe in reinventing the wheel. Like, there's a great resources out there. It's trusted resources and people that I truly do believe and trust in. So yes, let's get our church involved.
You kind of opened up this series distinguishing and defining for us the difference between a rhythm, a routine, and a rut.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was certainly helpful for our congregation, but I'm sure there's people listening who A, may not have been there,
Mm-hmm.
or B, don't attend our church, but they tune
Yeah.
into the pod, So I think for the sake of this season of After the Message, could you run through that just really quickly here? Like, because rhythm and routine, they kind of sound synonymous.
They do.
We understand a little bit of the rut, but I think it would be helpful for our listeners just so they know as we're talking about these things in future episodes what we're talking about.
Yeah. So a routine, and I think this is where when I chose to really lean into this, it actually happened as a result of a congregation member that I was talking to, and I was kind of letting them know, giving them a sneak peek into where we were going. And he was like, man, I'm looking forward to hearing that because I have really strong routines. And he was beginning to share of just kind of like how sometimes people make fun of him because he has such strong routines. And he's like, I don't think routines should be vilified. And I'm like, no, they shouldn't. So that kind of helped me to say, hey, I don't want to vilify routines. Routines are not bad at all. A routine at its core is simply a decision you make in advance. So you're saying, okay, I have a goal, and that goal is I want to lose 50 pounds. I need to begin to build a set of behaviors that's going to allow me to accomplish that. That's going to include me watching what I eat. It's going to include me going to the gym. Like, I'm beginning to create a series of behaviors to match a goal that I'm trying to reach.
Yep.
That's ultimately what a routine is. I found my way of doing that. A rut is when you don't revisit it. So you become so rigid and so dogmatic about the decision that you made that you have decided, not only am I going to the gym, but I'm going to the gym on Mondays from 8 until 10. And I don't care what's going on in my life. I'm going to the gym on Mondays from 8 to 10. Now, maybe that could be a good on-ramp because if you know that maybe it's easy for you to convince yourself not to do it, maybe that's possible. But if something happens in your family, something happens with your schedule, and something comes up, and you just can't move past it, that you're like, I'm not going to go and watch my child be born because I got this. That routine has become a rut that is not giving you life. It's outlived its purpose, and you're not able to recognize that I need to pivot, which is where rhythm comes in. So rhythm basically becomes a routine with grace built in it. Yes, I'm going to still stick with this outline of what I intend to do, but there's grace. And if I need to pivot my chest day to Tuesday because my schedule won't allow for it, there's grace. If I need to move this to do that, there's grace. I still have the routine, but it's saturated in grace so I can be flexible with what I need to do. I think that's the biggest distinction when we think about Jesus confronting and being confronted by people who were constantly challenging him because he was going against the grain of their customs. They were so obsessed with it that it became a rut. and they didn't sense, they know that this is a rhythm. He's still doing the things of God. They just missed it altogether. So for me, it's very much, yes, have a healthy routine, but make sure that grace is in it. Make sure you can breathe in it. And that's how we have good rhythms.
It sounds like there's a little bit more emphasis on the why and not so much the what,
Yes,
I guess.
absolutely.
Not that the what doesn't matter, but the what can fluctuate and change.
Yes,
And
1000%.
In one season, let's just use the gym analogy, for example, I may go to a standard like weights and treadmill type flow, but in order to stay engaged in that, I may move to a jujitsu gym for a little bit, like just to switch things up.
Yes.
I think that's kind of where you're going with that.
1000%.
When it comes to 2026 ears, when we say discipline, sometimes that can not land so well, even though, you know, not really that big of a deal. But
you mean because it's like in the Bible?
But, yeah, you know, or it sounds too rigid or too strict. But spiritual discipline, you know, basically, what is that, and why is it important?
Yeah, spiritual disciplines are, at its core, it's a set of intentional things that we do that fosters our relationship with Christ. I would say, to add a layer to that, it would be, these are things that I'm doing to be conformed into the image of Christ. So that's what my disciplines are. This is what I'm working towards. The Bible says, don't be conformed by the image of the world, but be transformed. So here's what this means. We are all being formed by something. That's just a fact. We're being formed by what we listen to. We're being formed by our family. You're in a season where you have your 2 young boys who are busy. You're being formed by that. You're being formed by your marriage. We're always being formed by the things around us. That's just kind of what it is. What our spiritual disciplines are, it's the space where we can be intentional about who we're being informed into. And so for us, I look at it like through the lens of like, there's like 2 primary buckets for me, at least when I think about it. I look at the spiritual disciplines as like the inhale and exhale. There's the things that I'm taking in. That's me taking in. That's me reading the word. That's me doing these things that draws me closer to God. And then there's the exhale, which allows me to demonstrate my walk with God so that other people can be the beneficiaries of it. Said another way, some people would say that our spiritual disciplines break down into 2 primary categories, and that is the disciplines of engagement and then ones of abstinence. And so what that basically means is these are things that I'm choosing to do: reading the word, prayer, connected to community. I'm doing these things so that I can be drawn closer to Christ and be connected to community. But then there's also the things of abstinence, things that I'm not going to do. That's fasting. That's seasons of solitude. It's the things that I'm choosing to take a step back from so that I can be formed. So for me, it's inhale, exhale. For others, it's things I'm going to do, things I'm not going to do. But at its core, they're important because it allows us to have a good, healthy balance of how do I engage the presence of God, and then how do I engage God's people?
Yeah. It can be, I guess we could conflate discipline with a works-based righteousness mentality. I think a lot of us have come from traditions that have sort of emphasized that in an unhealthy manner. Where the thing that we're doing becomes almost the thing that we worship, right? As opposed to the person that we worship. So how is this not like a works-based righteousness mentality, mindset, or way of life?
I get it. So full disclosure, man, I came up in a very religious, performative environment. And when I say that, it's really not built on a foundation of like, hey, everything is meant to be disregarded, but it was always built on this foundation of, yes, grace is available. Yes, God loves you, but man, you need to bridge that gap. And your disciplines became a demonstration of how much you love God.
Got it.
So it wasn't like, so it was never taught to me that you have to earn God's love, but it was certainly like, but show God how much you love him by how much you give. Show God how much you love him by how much you serve. Show him by how much you read. These things became demonstrations of your love. And so that creates stress. It creates anxiety. It creates competition. It creates a whole lot of things. And that was a little bit of what Meg and I were brought up in initially. And so then we got to the other end of the spectrum where we were introduced to God's love and joy and peace and kindness and all these other things that were a part of your walk with God. And so I like to say it this way. Um, I don't regret the structures and the importance of reading the word of God every day. I don't regret being taught the importance of praying daily, having a rhythm of that and really locking into that. The things that I do feel were a little bit more harmful was on those days, if you did not pray for 2 hours and 40 minutes, because our ecosystem was one that says you need to tithe your time to God, not just your resources. So if you didn't give 2 hours and 40 minutes to God, then you are not honoring God with
Okay.
your time. And so the condemnation, the shame, like I genuinely remember now, like I look back at it and it's like,
You doing okay?
I'm trying. All of our family's been together recently, and we just been having like these moments where you talk about the past as we always do.
Yeah.
And my oldest son Keith Jr. was talking to us about just how much Meg and I have changed in our spiritual walk, because he was old enough to kind of see like our radical transformation and the journey as we walk with God. And he was like, bro, like he said, I remember there was times where like y'all were just so locked in. Like we would be looking at our watches and saying like, wait a minute. So I got up and I prayed for 20 minutes. Then I prayed for another 30 minutes. And then it'll be like 11:30 at night. Like, bro, like I'm 20 minutes short. I got to go pray. Like
No
literally
way.
being to the point where now you look at it and you're like, that is so ridiculous. But genuinely feeling like if you didn't meet the quota, you were letting God down. So
Mm.
I understand if you come from an environment even remotely close to that telling someone the disciplines and doing these things can feel a lot like being restricted once again. So that's a part of a person's spiritual journey, their trauma. I've been there. I get it, brother. I get it. We could trade stories. We can trauma bond about it. Here's the other side of the coin. The other side of the coin is when I think about my relationship with my wife, um, I don't have to work for her love, but our relationship does require intentional work.
Sure.
So we met in high school. We became good friends. We reconnected after high school or after college. And so now we began to really foster and work towards something. And it took effort to call her. It took effort. I couldn't text her because I'm old enough that didn't even exist back then, Nate.
There you go.
I had to actually call and hope she answered the phone.
Wow.
Like, imagine that. Working through that. Hey, do you want to go out tonight? Like, and we made effort. We spent time together.
Yep.
And then that moved to the next level. Then we got engaged, and then we got married, and then we continued to work. And so when I think about the spiritual disciplines now, it's not that I'm working for God's love. I don't have to work to earn God's love, but because I am loved by God, it fuels the things that I do.
Sure.
So because I love my wife, yes, there are times I feel like talking. There are also times I don't feel like talking. But because I love her and she's like, hey, can we talk? The answer is, yeah, we can talk. Because what else am I going to say?
Yeah.
So it's the love that fuels the things that we do.
Sure.
And so for me, it's just looking at it through the lens of, and I think that's why Paul does use the church as the example of being the bride of Christ, because it becomes a very real example that a lot of us can identify with.
Mm.
Husbands, wives, spending time together. It's sacrificial. It's life-giving. It's work, but at the same time, I'm not working for it. But I'm not going to say that it doesn't require effort and intentionality to make sure you foster the relationship. So to me, I think that's the simplest way I can put it.
Yeah.
And again, the goal is not to believe that we can earn God's love. I read my Bible. He's more pleased with me. But because I love God and the way that I recognize that God loves me, I'm going to do my part to try to be intentional with spending time with him.
It's a vehicle, right? It's, it's not the destination, but
Mm-hmm.
we can't get there unless we participate in
Mm-hmm.
some way, shape. We can't just like be more like Jesus through osmosis
Yes.
necessarily.
Yes.
Like there's
We
got to
need-
be an action.
We need that guide, and we need community. There's a lot to go with it. Like, I know that you're one who always asks the questions, but what was your spiritual upbringing? How do you engage and understand the spiritual disciplines as you walk it out now?
Yeah. It probably wasn't as extreme as the 2 hours and 40 minute tithing your time thing, but it was pretty close. And it
Sure.
mainly had to do with church attendance, right? It
Okay.
mainly had to do with Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night,
Mhm.
then you got your Thursday visitation, being at church, I think. And then the abstaining part was a really big,
Okay.
almost to an unhealthy degree where you kind of escapism, like removed yourself from just normal society,
Sure.
because you can't engage with those people,
Yeah.
or you can't be seen in that
Yeah.
place.
Don't let your good be evil spoken of. Like,
Yeah,
what fellowship does light have with the dark?
exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all of these verses and biblical principles that were sort of twisted, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe even not really intentionally
Sure. Yeah.
either, just maybe a poor understanding of
Yep.
what really the heart behind it was, which I think is the human condition, right? Like we
Absolutely.
even see it with the people who are criticizing Jesus. They think that they're genuinely
Absolutely.
doing it from a place of revere and righteousness
Mm-hmm.
for God, as if the law is the priority.
Mm-hmm.
When in reality, Jesus says, like, I am the
I
law.
am the law. Yes.
So yeah, that's kind of where my journey began. So
That's I mean, and I think there's so many people that may have similar on ramps to it, where like a certain really focused expression of the faith can almost make you feel like traumatized. I remember talking with someone who recently said to me like, "Hey, I'm coming back to church. I'm getting reengaged, um, and there are certain terms that are said in church that I'm not saying that we can't say, but it just reminds me of where I
sure,
came from." And inviting people to lift their hands and engage the presence of God, which to me are very simple things of just how we participate. But for some people, it was like, if you don't do these things,
yeah,
then there's hidden sin in your life. So you just realize how even in spiritual things, to me, the enemy can try to find a space to even try to hijack certain principles that are found clearly in scripture, but weaponize it in a way that creates a trauma story that makes it hard for us to engage something that genuinely is liberating, but somehow it's become
mm.
restricting because of how it's been misused by man. Because the human condition sometimes it forces us to put these constraints around it, and that's what I think is the very thing that Jesus came to confront.
I think we're so I think we're so hesitant or afraid of being hurt,
Yeah.
though, or we're afraid of feeling discomfort, that we can try to avoid things or instances or places
Hmm.
altogether.
It's
Like,
true.
that guy may have been away from the church for a long time because he didn't want to have to face like
Hmm.
somebody saying, "Hey, lift your hands,"
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
I mean, pain's not always bad, right?
Yeah.
Like, we can give our pain to God, hopefully have him redeem it. And a lot of times what it really does is the Bible talks about how our suffering and our trials actually produce good things in us,
Hmm.
like perseverance. And
It does.
so yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the craziness of 21st century life,
Hmm.
the contemporary modern world we live in, all of the things that are vying for our attention,
Hmm.
even all of the good things, the responsibilities that we
Hmm.
have. Um, Somebody could be sitting here saying, like, "Hey, man, I don't have another minute to give. I can't add another thing to my life.
Yeah.
Um, what can I do? Like, I want to be genuinely closer to God, but I don't feel like that I can put in the time that's required to do so." Like, how do you encourage that person?
Yeah, I get it. It's something that I firmly do believe that it's so pervasive in our culture where we're just overextended. We're so maxed out. There's so many things on our plate. And I certainly think that in those spaces where we feel exhausted, we feel stretched, that the idea of adding something to our life can seem overwhelming. And like me mentioning 2 hours and 40 minutes, it almost sounds like a fantasy. Like, bro, where am I going to get that from? Like, I'm trying to figure out just how to get up and get out of the house with my family. So,
Yeah.
so for that, I want to pause and say, I understand the other side of that. And this is where I think is really important, where I think it really does challenge us to evaluate some of the decisions that we're making.
Mm,
So I'm surrounded by people of so many different age groups, so many different backgrounds, so many things that are going on in their life. And I love it, by people who are retired, by people who are just going to college and everything in between. And one of the consistent things that I see is the things that we choose to do with our time. So I find that it's very rare, not that it's impossible. It's very rare that it's not that we don't have time. It's just that we're allowing that time to be occupied by so many other things that then we are trying to figure out, where do I cram
mm,
Jesus into
mm,
time that's already been spoken for? So for me, it's asking the question first, can we back up and take inventory of all the yeses that you currently are allowing to occupy your plate.
Hmm.
And then just saying, do you have to go out 3 nights a week? Do you have to go out and do like genuinely looking and seeing,
Yeah.
let's evaluate what you currently have going on to see if there's any room for stuff there. Then from there, it does become beginning to change the way that we look at the spiritual disciplines or looking at the way that we engage the things of God. Because I truly believe that it's not about adding another thing. It's about allowing that to be the first thing because it adds perspective to everything else.
Got it.
When I engage the things of God, it adds perspective on how I steward my time with my family, how I steward our resources as a church. It sets the tone for so many other things. So to me, it's a huge priority because it helps sets the tone for everything else that's in our life. So I do understand and I do get it that sometimes we're stretched so thin. But I also think this is where having that spiritual assessment is so important because what that assessment does is it allows us to answer authentically, honestly, with where we are. And it reveals to us maybe the blind spot or the areas of our lives where we're not engaging as much. I would be very curious to see what comes to the surface. And maybe that's the thing that we need to lean into. So instead of it being just this blank canvas of, I need to do all 9, 12, 15, depending on how we look at the disciplines. I need to do all of these 100% every single time. But maybe when we look at the assessment, maybe the thing that's actually missing there is solitude. So it's not about adding something. It's about taking something away.
Got it.
So learning to see what is the thing in this season of life that God has kind of revealed to you and leaning into that a little bit more instead of feeling like I got to pray for 2 hours and then I got to do this and then I got to go to group. It's more so what's my season of life? What is God really challenging me with in the season? And maybe I'm so busy. That's the problem. Maybe solitude is the thing that God is challenging me to do. And that's what I'm going to start working on. Start small.
Yeah.
It's not this like I have friends of mine that bro, like they go on like 3-month retreats. They don't do it every year, but like one, like, oh yeah, I have like this every 5 years. I go on a 3-month retreat and I go to this secluded place and I pray with monks for about 2 weeks. We just sit there and then I do this and I do that. I'm like, for 3 months? Like, so in that matrix, I'm a backslider because I'm like, bro, I don't know where I'm going to have 3 months to do that.
Yeah.
But we all try to take the steps that we can. So I don't know if I'm a 3-month dude. I don't know if that's just my temperament. But man, give me 2 weeks, but I'll work towards it. But
I'll hang with a monk for 2 weeks.
Yeah, for sure. Like I know you would. You would love it. You would love it. But genuinely, just seeing where you are, seeing what step you can take, starting off small. But I think that in a nutshell, we are all busy. We all have a lot going on. So maybe it's not adding something. Maybe it's taking something away, and maybe that's the thing that God is leading us to do in this season.
It's kind of like a budget, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
When you talk to, if you're brave enough to talk to like a financial planner,
which can be terrifying sometimes,
and you're like, yeah, I just don't have money to save, and they go, well, you have 33 subscriptions right now, and you probably don't even know about half of them anymore. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's just,
great
it's
reference.
inviting someone else's eyes onto your life too, which is what the assessment,
yes,
practically does for you. But yeah, just inviting another set of eyes to take a look and go, well, you do have time for this, and you have time for that. Like, what can we work with?
Yeah, what can we adjust?
What can we adjust and take some baby steps, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because then you just start to develop a hunger and thirst for, okay, well, that's great that I've done this now, but what else is there? Like, I didn't know I could be this close to God. Is there another step? And you'll find that there are.
Yep. One of our elders said to me something that was so simple, but it was really meaningful. He said that, worship is in essence anything that you're willing to orient your life around. Idolatry is anything that you're willing to orient your life around. So it's genuinely saying, okay, what am I allowing to set the tone and how am I going to orient my life around that? So when you look at it through the lens of what you just described, like what are some areas I need to audit? At the core of it, it's still making sure that even the things that are on my plate, are they prioritized around my relationship with God?
Yeah.
So yes, I have to work, but is it prioritized around the things of God? Yes, I'm going to prioritize my family. Again, we allude back to, you have small children. All my kids are adults, so they can feed themselves, Nate. In fact, I love when they feed themselves. But you're in a different season than I am. But how do I still presence and prioritize God, even though my kids require more from me? It still can be done. It's just a matter of how do we include our family in it? Whereas mine is a little bit more like, I can do it for myself and Megan and I together. But for you, you can still prioritize God. It just may be with your whole family, and that's still honoring.
your kids feed themselves, my kids throw food at me. So that's where we are, dude.
I get it, brother. Just two ends of the spectrum.
Man,
I just want my kids to bring me home something every now and then.
exactly. And hope they don't throw it at you.
Yeah.
I had a moment with a friend who was just had gone through a similar life season, in parenting, and I was just talking about the difficulty or how I missed my previous rhythm, without having children, and how I just felt just kind of lost in that. And the person was just talking to me about, well, maybe this is an opportunity for you to experience God in a new way, and for you to encounter Him in even new geographical places that you may not normally do it. Like, yeah, you may normally have it in your chair with your coffee at this time, but if someone's got to be dropped off at school, or if you're waking up at 6 a.m. because someone's crying, like there may be a new way to approach that. And so I think that's also a testament to how gracious and loving our God is.
Absolutely.
And how the story of the gospel is actually Him coming to meet us.
Yes.
Instead of us elevating ourselves to meet Him too.
I think what's so like I love that. Something that has been a new rhythm that I've implemented recently has been like I'm really, I feel like every couple of years I try to lock in on fitness, but I'm really like locked in. You kind of get in that 50 plus mark and you're like, okay, I got to get serious. So like I'm really locked in. I'm going to the gym. I have my rhythm that I'm working. One of the things that has been so spiritually enriching for my soul is at the end of my workout, I always spend 30 minutes in a sauna in dead silence.
Yeah.
Like, and I'll put on my noise cancellation headphones on, but I won't have any music playing. And I'll just sit there. And that's my time of one of the disciplines of just meditating. And I'm just processing. And yes, my mind will want to think about, I'll bring it back.
Yeah.
It has been so enriching. So to your point, yes, like I'm still at the gym. It's not like I'm like, I got to go to the gym and then I got to do my 30 minutes of meditation. Like I found a way to integrate it into the rhythm of what my life is already doing. And now I don't want to miss it. Like I look forward to sometimes going to the gym just so I can go in a sauna and just sit there and just meditate on the goodness of God. Sometimes I'll, like, luckily for the sauna that's at our gym, a lot of people aren't in there. Sometimes I'll go in there and just shed a tear processing through things, man. Like it's just so enriching. So to your point, how do I integrate it into what I'm already doing?
Yeah. Meditation, man, lost art, right?
Absolutely.
Lost art. And something that is very difficult to do, given all the noise, given all the things that are maybe even requiring or at least vying for our attention. But I think what you said is truly helpful for maybe a lot of people. Like my mind wanders, but it's the discipline of being able to know, but I can redirect, like we have, not to get like too woo woo, but we have way more power over our minds than we know.
Yes.
And sometimes it's just like aligning your mind back to where it needs to be. So you mentioned a little bit how this portion of, or this discipline, this meditation has been transformative for you. Have there been any other in your life previously that you just look back on and like, man, when this got honed in, or when this happened, or when I was able to really grasp this practice, it kind of changed the game for me spiritually?
Yeah. This is such an interesting one because an on-ramp certainly is one that was rooted in legalism and I get it.
Yeah.
But my initial journey with God, like we would fast, like we do at our church, like we fast. And we would do a 40-day fast. So we would do a 40-day fast, but the fast had different themes at different points.
Okay.
And we did it for many years. And every year it was something that you look forward to, but it was way more hardcore. Like we didn't have gluten allergy. Like we didn't have a lot of the things that we have with science now. So it was like, this is what the fast is. This is what we're all doing. There was no get out of jail free card. I give grace to everybody, but you know what I mean? There was no easy fasting.
I got you.
So you had to like lock in. And so it was like pretty regimented. And yes, on paper, because it literally was on paper, like, what are we fasting from today? Like, and you would see it. Okay. It seemed so harsh. But bro, what that did for me as far as drawing closer to God, like genuinely having something that was outlined for me saying like, hey, this week we're fasting inclusive of food, but we're also fasting from TV. And so you just knew that as a community, there were other people in our church. We're all fasting from TV. Nowadays, people may look at that critically, like, you can't tell people what to do. But for us, it was so sharpening. Like, it was so good
Mm.
because then you redirected that time into spending time with family and to reading the word, and it really honed you more. So I would just say overall, the discipline of fasting absolutely is a game changer for me. And I still do. I fast every Wednesday. Typically, whenever I try to like lock in on message prep, like
Mm-hmm.
trying to at least ideate what I feel like God's speaking to me, I try to abstain, just my discipline before the Lord. I fast the first 3 days of every month. And that's just my way of setting it up and saying, Lord, this is your month. I want to be sensitive to you. So that's just kind of a rhythm that I have. I'm not legalistic about it. If
Yeah.
we're traveling and if I'm on a cruise ship and it happens to be the first 3 days of the month, guess what? I'm not fasting
Yeah.
on those 3 days. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that I don't love the Lord, but I paid for these meals and I'm going to get my money's worth out of
That's right.
it. I'm
That's
going to
right.
lock in and then we'll adjust it. So I'm not legalistic about it. But fasting is probably one of the ones that have really helped me. And it's so hard to put into words what that does for your spiritual life.
Mm.
Um, I wish I could give you the transactional like return of investment,
Yeah.
but what it does is it teaches you how to abstain so that it allows you to be more sensitive to the things of God. So fasting, absolutely. It meditating is been one, and meditating for me is it's not just a process of thinking, but it's the process of legitimately processing through the Word of God. And so, what that can look like for me, it's sometimes it can be me thinking through, let's say, even for instance, for this series, rhythms, it allows me to kind of break this down and then begin to just process through the implications of it. Man, what are my rhythms?
Mm.
What are my rhythms as it relates to me engaging the word of God? What are my rhythms with my family? But just meditating and inviting God into that has been really good because it kind of removes the read the Bible in a month type pressure. It just allows you to go with the pace of grace, man. And that has been incredibly enriching for me. So slowing down
Yeah.
and fasting have been incredible for my soul and still is.
Yeah. Imagine that, in a consumeristic society, not consuming,
Yes.
imagine how that could actually help
It's just
you.
a whole different paradigm, man.
Really, we're just telling our natural bodies like, no, like
Yes.
I don't submit to your
Yes.
authority,
That's right.
I submit to Christ,
Mhm.
right? And so it's a good outward reminder too of
Mhm.
an inward commitment.
Mhm.
Also, I mean, even physiologically, clarity of thought,
Yes.
simple things like that that can go a long way in
Yep.
our connection with God. Um, hey man, been reading my Bible for a while, been praying for a while. I'm not seeing results.
Mhm.
How can we pastor that person?
Yeah, I get it. I think the let me just skip past the surface level. Okay, I get it. I empathize. I've said it. I get it. Let's move past that. I think the problem is the fact that we're saying results in the
Okay.
first place. Because I don't sense that our calling with God is to produce results. Now, yes, we want to see fruit, we want to see growth, so we can define what results mean, and I'm sure that that's probably just some semantics. But when we think about results, it's like I'm doing this, I'm looking for an outcome. It becomes
Mm,
very transactional, and
mm,
so I did my part. Where can I get the results? Where can I see the weight loss? Where can I see what's been promised to me? So for me, it's causing us to slow down and saying, hey, the goal of all of this stuff is not to produce results, it's to produce fruit.
mm.
And the thing about fruit is fruit takes time. Fruit genuinely requires you to cultivate the ground. It requires you to plant seeds. It requires you to water. It requires you to wait. It
Yep.
requires you to do these things. And then there's growth and then there's fruit. So we're talking about a principle that is so important. And spoiler alert, we're going to be hearing about this a whole lot in the future. That's my breadcrumb
There
that
you go.
people will make sense of. We're going to talk a whole lot about abiding.
Okay.
What does it really mean to abide? And so if fruit is not struggling to try to produce result, it abides. And as it abides, it does indeed produce fruit. So for me, my encouragement is one, don't give up. But then after you have a season of, okay, I'm not giving up, I'm doing my thing, that's when you begin to take the spiritual assessment, coming back to that, and saying, okay, the things that I'm doing, maybe there's something else God wants to do. Maybe the breakthrough, if we want to use a more healthy spiritual word instead of result, if the breakthrough that I'm looking for, maybe it's not in me consuming more content, maybe it's me abstaining. Maybe I need to scale back on watching these shows. Maybe I need to scale back on these things. And that's where the spiritual assessment and other things can help us to fine tune what we believe God's drawing us to. But I think the first thing is to stop thinking of it of results, think of it as fruit, which are two completely different things. And sometimes you need to add things, but sometimes you need to abstain from things in order to see the fruit in your life.
Yeah. Shift in expectation too, maybe, you know, recategorizing what a result actually is. You know, Christ lived the perfect Christian life, if you will, before that was even a term. And he was taken to a cross to be killed. So the result of that definitely wasn't what we would call a breakthrough, right, in our term, but it was what needed to happen, which gave the whole world an opportunity to be reconciled to God. So that's a pretty good result, if you will.
Yeah, for sure.
This is going to be a great season, I think, for our church at large. Obviously, on After the Message, some good question and answer time, good discussion time, but anything that you are looking forward to or maybe anticipating, anything for our church or just even you personally as we discover what these rhythms can do for us in our walk with God?
Yeah, I'm at a point where you kind of go through these periods of time where you recognize your season, and the pandemic was the major life-altering, time-shifting way in which we engage church, community, and the ripple effects are still felt. You have people who have not been back to church. You have people who are watching online, people who've grown distant, everything in between. And you have other people who've swung right back into their old rhythms and routines. I think what I'm hoping for our church is a greater hunger, is a greater is a reordering of prioritizing and seeing the value of engaging the presence of God connected to the community of faith. If there's something that I could really, really lean into, is us recognizing the importance of us being together. That's such a vital part of our spiritual formation. And I believe that what the pandemic produced is a lot of Lone Ranger Christians, where we become spiritual nomads, and I'll watch this online, I'll go to this church, and then I'll jump over here, I'll do this thing, and I'm kind of like just flowing all around. And I've seen such a significant uptick in that. And I don't vilify people who are searching for a space for them to land. But what we see in scripture is that so many references are like, it's agrarian culture. So you're rooted, you're planted, you're like, there's these nuances of being connected and allowing it to flourish and grow. So my hope is that by the end of this, which I don't think that this is going to end, this is more of like something that will permeate through our culture. But I'm hoping to see more people rooted in community, rooted in the things of God, rooted in genuine seasons of prayer and fasting, just rooted in these things and allowing the presence and fruit of God to really bear in their lives. So I think that's it. So in a nutshell, I'm looking for more people to grow mature in their faith. Now, what does that practically look like? There's all types of metrics you can throw out there, but it's just people who are producing the fruit of kindness, love, joy, peace. Seeing that in people's lives is what I'm hoping that this can hopefully cultivate.
That's great.
Yeah.
That could be huge for our church, for our city, for the world.
Indeed.
Looking forward to it. After the Message, new season. It's finally here, and we hope that you enjoy the ride along with us. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks for listening to After the Message. If you want to learn more about Celebration Church Orlando, visit our website, celebrationorl.org, or follow us on social media @celebrationorl.